guess I'll kind of start with my journey in like getting into grad school, specifically UW. I'm in the chemical engineering department, and I'm now in my 4th year, and I changed my major. I started in undergrad as like a pre-med major, and then I was like, shoot, I don't really want to, like, I care more about the environment, and like one of the biggest environmental issues is like overpopulation. Why am I like devoting my life to being a doctor
saving humans
when I want to like
saving lives,
save the planet? Not that I don't care about human lives, right? But
that's so funny.
yeah, so I then switched my major into environmental science, and I enjoyed that program, but I realized it was setting me up with for more like consulting or environmental policy, or like more of these like kind of like soft skills. And I have a very analytical mind, and I was like, well, I don't know if this is the best use of my skills, and I don't know that I'll be happy in positions like that. So then my parents encouraged me that it was fine as a junior to change my majors again. So then I realized that I wanted to do chemical engineering, but the advisors would not let me switch my major that late in the game into like an engineering field. So I ended up just taking all of the courses that I could in chemi, and then applying to grad school. And so I spent a lot of time figuring out, can I even get into grad school? If I do grad school, can I do a PhD, or should I start with a master's, or should I get another BS, or what should I do? So then I ended up applying to a ton of grad schools, and I got into all of them except UCLA. So that was like a really like nice shock to me. So then I was like left with like, shoot, now I have all these options. Like, what am I gonna do? And I will say ARCS was like it was like a very last minute choice for me. I was like choosing between here and the last University of Virginia and Yale. Those were like my top 3 that I really wanted to go to, and the ARC scholarship is like what kind of sealed the deal for me coming here. So that's all that backstory. But now that I've been here, so the reason I wanted to get into chemical engineering from like an environmental perspective rather than doing something like environmental engineering is because I realized that chemical engineering, I kind of like, I remember having this conversation on the phone with my parents when I was a junior in undergrad, thinking about changing my major, and they were like, well, what do you think the biggest engineering, or what do you think the biggest environmental issues are, and how could you, if you like followed some engineering track, what would be some solutions that you could find, and like what kind of technologies do those fall into? And I realized that it was kind of clean energy security and clean water security. And I was like, well, I guess I can do both of those depending on what track I take within chemical engineering. I could make either of those work. So that's kind of what set me going on the chemical engineering track. And so I got here, my initial project was on fundamental battery research, and my advisor works in electrochemistry. So it's kind of taken a really interesting switch in the last year and a half, 2 years now. And so now my project is funded by the Center for Dialysis Innovation, and we're actually looking at ways to make kidney dialysis portable. So it's totally not clean energy anymore, clean energy technology.
Back to saving lives.
Yeah, I know, it's really come full circle, right? But interestingly enough, there are a lot of like similarities between what I'm working on with the Center for Dialysis project and fuel cells and like clean energy technology in the form of fuel cells. So I plan on, upon graduating, kind of pivoting back into clean energy space. So I've got this like really weird like circuitous story about like where I am today and how I've gotten here, and the fact that like my project isn't completely fall in line with why I came to grad school to begin with. But I'm really happy with the project. It's a really it almost feels like being in a startup in a way, rather than being I think a lot of people struggle in grad school because it's just so open-ended. It's like, well, you're here to research something new and novel, and you determine what that is. What I'm doing is totally new and novel, but it's like we have set goals. We have targets to meet. We have timelines. We're like, it feels less like kind of generally academic. It is still academic, but more like tangible kind of goals to me. So that's really cool. But yeah, again, the motivation is I'm still definitely in grad school for the clean energy motivation. So let's see, what else was on that list of things that you asked me to talk about?
Well, I think I'd like to hear a little bit more about the specifics of the research that you're doing, and then on top of that, just that's probably it. Yeah.
Well, way to start, that's a significant place. to
Yeah,
start.
I think
Okay.
just a little more specifics about the project.
So this is an interesting aspect. So because this is such a kind of like new field and potentially a lot of money involved in it, there are really there's a lot of intellectual property surrounding what I'm doing, meaning that we're like working to get a patent, and therefore before we have any type of like provisional patent or like protection around what I'm doing, I'm not really allowed to like talk details much, which is something I wanted to discuss with you. I don't know if that means that like I shouldn't be talking at the luncheon, because I can't really talk specifically about like catalysts I'm using and things like that. But I also do realize too that at the end of the day, higher level talk of research is like more efficient when trying to
What if
communicate
you were
ideas
trying
to a
to?
large audience.
What if you were asked though to go present your research to a potential investor?
Yeah.
How would you do that? I mean, because that's got to be in what you're. If that's what you're doing,
Yeah.
partly, then
Yeah,
you
so
must know how to
I'll
talk
jump
about that.
into like kind of the broad picture. So pretty much, so there's a lot going on in this kind of generally trying to. It's called regenerative dialysis. So I don't know if any of you guys have known anybody that's on dialysis, but it's the main reason that makes dialysis so non-portable, stationary, is that there's this what's called dialysate fluid, which is what's filtering your blood. So you have a dialysate fluid, which is clean, made to imitate, like it's like blood serum minus all the proteins and stuff, flowing one way, and then a countercurrent to it. There's this separator so that these two fluids don't mix. The countercurrent to the dialysate fluid down here would be your blood, and so your blood is filled with like toxins and just solutes that your kidneys aren't working properly, so your kidneys can't remove them from the body, and also just extra fluid in general. And so across this membrane, these toxins can flow into the dialysate fluid. And so since this is a diffusion-based process, the concentration of all these toxins and solutes in the dialysate is meant to stay at 0 or very close to 0, because there's just so much of this dialysate fluid being flown at a high flow rate. And what that means is that it's coming from a clean vat of like I've gone to the Northwest Kidney Centers in downtown Seattle, and they have their basement is filled with like a water filtration system to just like meet the demands of how much fresh water they need for all these patients that are in there for hours on end during their dialysis sessions. And so therefore it can't be portable in any way, because this dialysate fluid is coming from a reverse osmosis system. It's being used a single pass as the toxins filter into it, and then it's going into the sewage system and being discarded. So the main concept around the technology that we're developing is making it regenerative. So
Making the liquid waste regenerative?
Yes, the dialysate fluid. So there'll be kind of like two closed loop systems. There'll be the loop of a patient's blood exiting their body and flowing through that cartridge countercurrent to the dialysate fluid, and then flowing back into their body. And then there'll also be the dialysate circuit, rather than coming from a clean vat and going into the sewage. It'll just be used once, and then this like kind of black box at this point, until we get some like protection around like what's in this black box, is regenerating the fluid and able to allow for multiple passes. So the idea is that like rather than 120 to 180 liters of fluid per session being used, it'll be more like 1 to 2 liters of fluid. So
And what benefit to the patient is it?
lots of benefits. So the big one would be autonomy, and like able to just go about their daily lives rather than sitting strapped up to a dialysis machine for 3 to 4 hours per session, normally about 3 sessions per week. So it's like they say it's like a part-time job that nobody signed up for. so that's the biggest thing. But from a clinical standpoint too, it's much more efficient to have kind of a steady, constant filtration rate rather than what's currently seen is these patients go in for 3 to 4 hours. They start with a very high toxin level in their blood, and then all of a sudden it like shoots really down, and then it spikes back up over the next few days, and then it shoots back down when they come back in. And so they have all these like fluctuations not only in toxin levels and just solute levels in their blood, but also in fluid retention of their body. And so there's a lot of studies that have shown, so people that do, for example, I think it's called nocturnal dialysis, they have to have a lot of money and they have to have nurses in their home, but they can hook up to these machines at nighttime. And so then they're doing like 7 sessions a week for, 8 to 9 hours a day. So it's a much more gradual, steady filtration that's more on par with how our kidneys actual function.
But with I think I missed, I think you probably said it, but with the black box that you're developing, the individual can do the filtration at home at any time or all the time?
All the time. So the idea is have it running all the time, get it hooked up to, we're kind of in this proof of concept stage, so we're like really just working to make sure we can get rid of the amount of toxins that are produced on a daily basis, but we're not super concerned with size and noise and all these other things that are like definitely going to become a big things to plan into the design with time. But anyways, the idea is eventually down the road is to hook it up to an app and have like a doctor and maybe a nurse available anytime on an app if something goes wrong, but it should be very easy to use for people to kind of just, go on a run, even if they want to be active or, not.
Has there been a news article about this? I feel like I read something or heard something.
There was called The Active. So there's a whole site you can actually visit that's called it's Center for Dialysis Innovation, CDI, and it talks about what the motivations are and kind of everything I'm telling you now, what the kind of concept is. And so could have been, an article on that. But the Active device, which Jonathan Himmelfarb is one of the co-founders of the Center for Dialysis Innovation, and he's a doctor at Harvard V Medical Center, and he's spent his entire life, he's a nephrologist, which is a doctor of kidneys. And so he spent his whole entire life researching kidneys and specifically dialysis, and so he made this device called the Active, and I forget exactly what it stands for. The Active, I'm sorry, I'm getting jumbled up. The Active is the name of our concept device. His was called the WAC, Wearable Artificial Kidney. And it was like he published a paper on it, a research paper, and he was the overseeing doctor. But it was kind of like a hip belt and like 360 degrees, like bottles and pumps and things like that. So it was pretty clumsy. The idea for our device is to have it kind of be more contained, but we'll definitely go through stages of like getting there.
So it's like a backpack, and you have 1 or 2 liters of the dialysate with the black box, so it's not so heavy that it keeps you from being able to ambulate. Yeah,
backpack, hip belt, but like less of a. If you see the photo of like the WAC done a few years ago, the hip belt was like, all the way around 360. If we do like a hip belt, a fanny pack, it might be something more similar to mine here, like just kind of like more contained. Maybe a purse. There's actually a whole team funded by the CDI right now that's the human factors team. So they're interviewing people with dialysis that are on dialysis right now and saying if we are able to develop some device like this, how would you use it? Would there be any non-starters for you? Like what if you walk into a room and there's some buzzing coming out of your backpack? Would that make you so self-conscious that you wouldn't want to use it? And so they're taking all these factors into account.
Because it's a device that they'd have to carry around with them all the time, or is it something they can just plug in when they're home and wanting to use it?
It would be with them all. It would be on. So the end stage is to have it be on them all the time, because like I said, it from a clinical standpoint, it helps it helps limit how aggressive their kidney failure is accelerating with time if they're able to kind of constantly filter. But few hours unplugged to go do something, then that could be an option too. So there are all these like ideas where like as we kind of progress through this project, there's going to be probably a lot of milestones that we reach that are like already a massive improvement compared to what dialysis is now.
Yeah.
So there'll be like phases of different like patents and like different like technology.
Yeah.
How many people are on dialysis in this country?
Ooh, this is a number that I've definitely heard, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Is it
Large number?
rising? Is it
It's-
stable?
I don't know that it's rising, but it's a massive expense to the country. So we're getting CDI is funded by a lot of government money right now because
Mhm.
the government is paying so much through Medicare and Medicaid to
Yeah.
fund these patients.
Yeah. So back to your original discussion about wanting to switch into environmental studies, I think you said that this will, you think this is also going to have something to do with clean water filtration, right?
Actually, so that was like when I was an undergrad, I was like, well, I could do clean water or clean energy, and I kind of went the clean energy route.
So how does but doesn't this work that you're doing, didn't you say you see they're seeing some opportunity for this research to move into other clean energy opportunities?
Yeah, so this is this is where it gets a little bit hairy in terms of what
You can say.
what
What
yeah.
you can say?
Yeah, so this like black box is I guess what I'll say at this point is it's very closely similar in operation to a fuel cell, almost like reverse of a fuel cell. So a fuel cell is like you put some type of inlet feeds on an anode and a cathode, and reactions happen, and then you get power out of it. So you get chemical power turning into electrical power, and an electrolysis cell is the opposite. You're taking electrical power, you power some cell that's allowing some reactions to happen, and those reactions are important to you in some way. So kind of my cell is more like an electrolysis cell, and fuel cells are just like the opposite of electrolysis cells. So I personally plan to eventually get back into the clean energy space by kind of taking what I've learned in my research here, even though at face value it might not seem like clean energy. I mean, it's not clean energy research, but I think I could definitely frame it as that.
Correlation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like you could. Is the next person here already? Okay. Gosh, thank you so much. That was fascinating.
Yeah, I hope. Yeah, let me know how well that could fit into anything, really.
Question.
Well, we would probably have to work on how we could frame this into a speech where it could be,
there's a lot. Yeah.
you
See,
know,
I think the angle to me is from the patient angle, not,
the dialysis angle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's, what people relate to, that they have friends and family on dialysis.
Mhm.
And you can't really talk about your black box.
Yeah, exactly. And I
So
don't even
that's-
Yeah,
know
you can
personally.
talk
I don't
about it.
really know how like interested the general public really is in like hearing about my like daily experiments and stuff. Like you guys are probably better at like helping students come up with like the best way to communicate science to people that don't have all the background, and like
Yeah.
saying all these like jargony words are just gonna go over their head and lose them.
Yeah, you're a great coach.
Yeah.
Eventually.
I'm just curious, do you have a relationship with your donors?
I've only met a couple of them. Sometimes they stop by my lab because if they want to like see researchers doing the work, but I think most of it is no. I don't have any part in like writing the grants or going to meetings, giving them updates.
With
and stuff.
Washington Research Foundation.
No,
Oh, sorry.
Are you
Yeah.
watching?
Sorry, I was,
She's,
yeah.
that's not what it says.
It says Luciana
Todd and
and Todd.
Luciana, yeah.
Right.
I see them every once in a while. We do like lunch or coffee or something.
Mhm.
Luciana.
And are you part of the WRF cohort that you do events with WRF as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've gone to the WRF events a couple times. I think now that I'm technically not a fellow anymore, I don't think I'm getting invites to that anymore. But I've always enjoyed. I think all my 3 years when I was a fellow, I was going to their they would have a yearly. I think it might have been in like spring, like a luncheon type thing.
Yeah.
That was always nice to go to.
Yeah, and they really are interested in
Well, I hear the word patent, and that is
Yeah.
something that they've been very open about, the fact that that is something
Mhm.
they're interested in. And
Yeah.
so
Yes.
they like to see the research. So when I heard you say that, and you're like, well, I can't really talk about it, I was thinking,
Yeah.
I wonder how much your donors actually know
Yeah.
in terms of
Do they
that.
know very much about it? Because were you doing this at this level when you were still going there to visit them?
Yeah, so I've told Luciana and Todd like about what I've told you guys about this,
Mhm.
and I haven't. I think that my last event that I went to at WRF, I was kind of just getting accepted on, or I was
Oh,
just
okay.
like taking this project.
Yeah, because this is
on.
exactly what they want.
I was gonna say, it would be wonderful if you have some form of an updated bio, because we have your original first year bio,
Uh-huh.
but we've done a lot of where are they now with our scholars, and it would definitely be something to share with WRF, because they would
Yeah,
love
it
to
would
hear
be.
Yeah.
that you're doing
That's-
this type of research.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely
Great.
do that, and they would probably be help. I mean, me as a grad student, there are a lot of other grad students on this project that have never had experience with patents, and I think a lot of the postdocs and advisors involved have had experience with patents, but I don't. It's a whole space that I'm, making my head spin. Thinking
Fun,
about
yeah.
what I'm allowed to
Must
talk
be
about.
interesting.
Yeah.
How's your painting going?
What?
How's your painting going? Your
Oh, it's going
painting.
well. Yeah, I just finished a really cool mountain painting that I really like. So.
In